Hi, everybody. It's Lori here today to talk about my books for the previous week. My theme was in honor of weddings, which you typically see a lot of in June. So I thought it'd be fun to try to come up with books that had the word husband, husbands, wife, or wives in the title. So if you watched the ending to last week's video, you know that I had said that I had some great books here, that I had a very successful reading week. Can't wait to share these with all of you. So let's just jump right in. The books were The Husbands by Chandler Baker, The Tobacco Wives by Adele Myers. We had a fan favorite. I feel like everybody and their mother has loved this book, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And, if I can pick it up, My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. Where should we start? Should I just let's grab The Tobacco Wives here. This is a historical fiction set in the late 1940s in North Carolina, where we have Maddie, a young seamstress who gets dropped off by her mother to her auntie's home for she has no idea how long. The mother has really been kind of reeling over the death of her father and wants to find herself a new husband. Maddie's kind of getting in the way. So Maddie, I think she's about 15 here, is dropped off unceremoniously in the middle of the night to her auntie's home in Bright Leaf, North Carolina, which is the tobacco home. Her aunt is a seamstress. For all of the tobacco wives there, she makes custom dresses, gowns, ball gowns, outfits for them. And so she is entering the busy season when typically Maddie would not visit her. She normally visits her for a couple of months in the summer. So her mother is decided, she's lonely. She needs somebody else in her life, a man in her life. And so she drops Maddie off, takes off, and her Aunt Etta is kind of shocked. It's like, what? Why is she here? What am I going to do with her? Thankfully, Maddie has been learning from her aunt how to sew and has really been developing her craft. And so she is able to step in with a catastrophic event happens and her aunt is not able to do the ball gowns and all of the dresses that she typically does at this high season point of the year. Sets off a whole chain of events that was incredibly interesting, had me glued to the pages. I will say a lot of historical fiction kind of has centered on World War II. And while that's kind of mentioned a little bit here, because the men are just starting to come home, some of the women want to keep their jobs from, that they had during the war. And so there's grumblings of that, but you don't hear a lot of the typical parts of the World War II that you do in historical fiction. So that was a welcome change of pace. It was very briefly alluded to in the book. It was much more focused on the tobacco side of this and the tobacco wives, Maddie's kind of growing up really quickly as a 15-year-old in this position of sudden responsibility for herself and a lot of the issues that were facing people at that time. I was really engrossed in this. I probably wouldn't have picked up this book except for this video, and I'm so glad that I did because I really did enjoy myself. I've been burned out with a lot of historical fiction recently, and so this gives me hope that there are a lot more types of historical fiction out there that I will enjoy. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do tend to really enjoy historical fiction. It's just sometimes the subject matter is so heavy on my heart that it's hard for me. I need some kind of an emotional and mental break between them. And this was it was emotional enough where I didn't feel like this book was breaking me and then I needed a huge break from the historical fiction books that I have typically enjoyed. I really like this one a lot. I would highly recommend it if you're interested in that time period, learning more about the tobacco industry, the wives. Some of the workers' rights were really discussed here. women's rights. It was very interesting. I'm going to give it a 4-star, and I would highly recommend. The next book is The Husbands by Chandler Baker, and this follows Nora Spangler and her husband Hayden and their family trying to find a new place to live. She is extremely successful. He also has a good job, but she has a high-powered attorney position. She is trying to make partner. She feels pulled in every direction. Her law firm, oh my gosh, they are antiquated to the max, where they just expect her to put in 20-hour days. They don't care that she has a child. They seem to think that's a hindrance. And so, and her her husband, why can't he do more? And of course, that's not the typical gender roles that you see. And so her bosses there just don't understand that. They have wives that can pick up the slack, and they don't understand why she doesn't have the same thing. Doesn't her nanny take, all of these responsibilities off of her shoulders? And so they have little respect for her or concern. They don't care. They just want her to manage everything in her life, juggle all of it. She gets pulled in for a meeting where it comes into question whether or not she is even going to make partner this year, even though it's her turn to make partner. They mention, oh my gosh, I was just absolutely floored. They mentioned the time off that she took from the firm, and that was the postpartum care that she had when she had her baby, and she was still working at home, and it was just amazing. I was rolling my eyes and getting angry at the misogyny in this book, actually, but we have a little bit of a turnabout is fair play type of scenario here. I've seen this described as a reversed Stepford Wives, and I will agree with that. We have an upscale community, gated community here, where all of the wives seemingly have it all. They have these high-powered jobs, super supportive husbands that just seem to drop everything, get the kids, make the dinner, clean the house, support their wives at every turn, and they just keep uttering the same phrase, "My wife works so hard." And I was giggling at that. Then it started to get a little creepy. I was like, what? I will say this book took a couple of turns that I wasn't expecting. I expected some of them. I mean, you go into it because knowing, and it says Stepford Wives right in the beginning. I'm not telling you anything that they don't tell you right in the beginning blurb. You should know that kind of going in, but it does take other turns that I wasn't expecting. There is like ominous music that you can just hear at certain aspects of this book where you're like, something bad's gonna happen. I will say I didn't 100% like the ending, which is why I'm going to give it a 3.75. I'd like to give it higher, but the ending, I just didn't love it, and I obviously can't tell you why because of spoilers. I just personally wanted it to go in a different direction. I will say it's interesting because I was getting really kind of like fired up feminist energy from this book. I was getting angry. I was like, why am I the one doing all the work? Why is it just falling on my shoulders? Why do I work this high-powered job and clean the house and, figure out, what's for dinner? And it was really interesting. And I keep thinking of a phrase in this book was basically a passive passenger. So in other words, even if you have somebody in your life, so like a spouse or a partner that is willing to do the things that you want them to do. So like, let's say you say, hey, can you do the dishes? Or can you make this dinner or whatever? They're basically along for this passive passenger type of ride where they don't have to think about those things. They don't have to remember the dentist appointments or doctor's appointments or paying the homeowner's insurance or the taxes on the house or rotating the tires, those kinds of things, along with like making, meal planning and all of these other types of things. While they might be willing, I hate that word, willing to do those things and they jump in, they're kind of along for the ride. They don't have to have that mental acuity and always be tuned in to all of these things that we have to remember. There's that level of imbalance. It seems like in relationships, a lot of times you have one person that is kind of actively paddling the canoe and the other person that is kind of, enjoy along for the ride. And I will say, me that that's what this kept reminding me of. I will say I enjoyed it. It was a fun read. There was a lot of interesting twists and turns. I didn't like the ending, but overall a solid read. Another one that I would not have picked up if it wasn't for this video. So I'm so glad I read it. I will be checking out books by all of these authors again, so I don't need to say it after every one. I haven't read anything by any of these authors in the past, so super excited to check their backlist, see if anything new is coming out. But yeah, I thought this was a wild ride and enjoyed it. Speaking of wild ride, holy cow. So this next one is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. Okay, I will tell you, people have compared it to Dexter. I would not say that. I was a huge fan of Dexter, love that show, have watched every episode. I would not say that. This is different. I mean, to me, it's a loose comparison. I wouldn't go into, I mean, I kind of went into it thinking that. I think that did me a little bit of a disservice. So if you're going to pick up this book, shut that part off in your mind, because I think it did me a disservice thinking that. I kept waiting for that aspect to come in and it just didn't. And I don't want to get into why so much, but and I highly recommend you pick this book up. I think it didn't do itself any favors by having that comparison. And it was right in the beginning. I will tell you, it says Dexter meets Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It wasn't. And so I don't like the comparison, but other than that, I absolutely loved this book in the most what in the heck are they doing kind of way. So we have our main character here, our narrator and his wife. He's unnamed throughout the entire book. We never get his name. You have what seems to be a seemingly normal couple here with our narrator and his wife Millicent. They have 2 children. They have jobs. She's a real estate agent and he is a tennis instructor. And they're leaving, just a regular suburban type of life, except they like murder. And I don't want to get too much into it because that whole thing, how that goes, it starts off a certain way and I was thinking, okay. And then it kind of changed and it swings around again. There are so many twists and turns to this book that even though it seems relatively long, let me see how many pages are in here. I mean, I guess it's not really, it's 370 pages or whatever. It just seems kind of thick to me. Maybe the pages are thick, but I flew through this so quickly. I could not put it down. It was one of those books where just really wanted to know what was going to happen. I think it lulled me into a sense of complacency in the beginning. This was bananas in the best kind of way. I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend. So much so that I was figuring out how I could add more of this author's backlist to my TBRs. That are pretty full, honestly, for the rest of the year. But I loved it. Highly recommend. 5 stars. I mean, it's not necessarily for the super faint at heart. I would say, this is what I would say about the Dexter connection. If you didn't mind Dexter, you probably will enjoy this, but for different reasons. It's not because of that. If you don't mind murder for reasons, then this might be interesting. I don't know. It was quite a wild ride and I really enjoyed it. 5 stars. And the last book for the week was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I went into this knowing how much people love this book. And so sometimes you read a book and you're just thinking, okay, what if I hate the book? There's all this pressure. Okay. I just thought, well, if I hate this book, I'll pick a different one. I mean, I want to be because I want to be honest. I don't want to talk about my real feelings, but I just really thought everybody's going to be throwing like rotten fruit at me if I hate this book. But it was really important to me that I went into this with an open mind where I thought, okay, I'm just going to let this story unfold and see where it goes, see how I feel about this and just kind of let everything flow over me and kind of see this as a story about somebody's life, which was what it was billed as. So we have Monique here, who is tasked with writing the biography of Evelyn Hugo. and she doesn't understand why it was her that was picked. So she's been working for a news magazine. She's been doing articles, but nothing of the caliber that would have afforded her this opportunity to write about Evelyn Hugo, which is one of the biggest movie stars of the time. She has had a career that has spanned decades and is a famous movie star. She has kind of retreated to her apartment and is living out her retirement basically as kind of a recluse, doesn't do interviews, and somehow seems to find Monique and wants to share her life story with her, and is putting up some of her most famous gowns to benefit the American Breast Cancer Society. And so Monique is like, why me? I don't understand. So she goes there, she meets with Evelyn Hugo, who, by the way, reminds me of Elizabeth Taylor. I don't know if anybody else was thinking that, but when I was reading this, I just kept thinking of Elizabeth Taylor just because she had been married multiple times as well and seemed like the caliber of movie star that we were talking about. I don't know, but that's what I was picturing in my mind. But yeah, so her entire life story kind of unfolds. There's a lot to it. There's ups and downs. There's a lot of sadness, a lot of reasons for her to have this many ex-husbands, things that she did in her career to help herself along to remain famous. She talks about the great love of her life and kind of reveals that as part of her book. Some of her biggest secrets all come out as well. Monique is shocked. I was shocked. There were moments that I definitely cried or teared up. I definitely caught myself with like a sob at one point. I know a lot of people highlight this because I did see it as highlighted for books, but for me, not having a wonderful relationship with my own mother, this got me. This sentence or two in the book. So Monique is meeting her mother at the airport. Her mother is kind of sensing that she needs her and comes to stay with her. Monique had gone through a breakup prior to this, and so she just feels like there's a lot of things going on in her daughter's life, and so she kind of shows up and wants to visit her there. And so she says, so she starts crying, and she says, I feel no pressure to stop crying. I feel no need to explain myself. You don't have to make yourself okay for a good mother. A good mother makes herself okay for you. What? I was like, I don't even know how I got through that without just like sobbing. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful sentence. A good mother makes herself okay for you. Oh, that got me. And that was almost at the end of the book. I was thinking, I mean, there were moments when I got a little teary-eyed because I was sad for her having gone through some breakups and disastrous situations in my own life. I could relate to some of the things that Evelyn was recounting in her story. That was the moment that was just like choked up sob moment of overwhelming emotion. But I loved this story. It was so good. I can see why so many people love it. My only problem is this the first book from Taylor Jenkins Reid that I read? And now I'm like, are they all like this? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've read a lot of her books. I tried reading Malibu Rising and it wasn't really for me at the time. I did a softie enough. I will go back to it. I don't know what it was at the moment. I think I was thinking it would be a better summer read. I wasn't really tuned into it at that exact moment. But now I want to read Carrie Soto is Back. Is that what it is? So let me know your thoughts down below if you've read quite a few of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. Let me know what your thoughts are, because I don't know, is this like the pinnacle and I did myself a disservice by not reading a couple of other ones? I'm not sure, but 5-star, easy 5 stars for me. Loved it. Absolutely had a wonderful time reading all of these great books. Found some great new authors. Definitely, I would definitely pick up a book by each of these authors again. No question. There wouldn't be a hesitation. I want to add books from them to my upcoming TBRs for sure. So highly recommend. If you haven't tried these authors in the past, I would recommend these books as a way to start, or just check their back lists. But yeah, I had a wonderful week. 2 5 stars. I mean, we had a 3.75 and a 4-star. Highly recommend all of these. So thank you so much for watching. If this is the kind of content that you like and enjoy, I hope you decide to subscribe down below and give me a like for this video. I appreciate you as all of my returning subscribers and viewers, and I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.